This whole subject of esotericism is an incredibly difficult one. And a lot of people just lack the esoteric dimension in their thinking. But it wouldn't be unreasonable to suppose that you might be able to somehow convince a well-educated person who's used to using their mind about the reality of it and the seriousness of it. And so it was that my great friend Geoffrey Farthing, who died just over 5 years ago and who was a founder member of this school, used it as a reason for belonging to the scientific and medical network, which I think has been mentioned already at this school. And it consisted, like it sounds, of scientists and in particular of medical people who are interested in the medical side of science. But it attracted a much wider audience than that when it was founded, and Geoffrey felt that it was a good place to try and get over to scientists the esoteric dimension. And so he joined the SMN, and I'm not quite sure how much of a role he played in the formation of the esoteric section of the SMN. But he did attend the esoteric section. And I well remember, because we met a lot, we lived near each other and we were very close friends, him coming back from these monthly meetings of the esoteric section of the SMN and moaning. He really moaned about it. He was really dispirited. He said, "Colin," he said, "I cannot get through to them. I cannot get them to get hold of what we're talking about." Because they had a particular paradigm set in their minds, and they couldn't shake themselves out of it. Now, we're looking this afternoon at the combination of science and religion. It was a strange fact that the particular group of scientists and engineers that I worked with had a high proportion of people who had a religious attitude and conviction. Very strange and unusual, because the number of scientists who are into science, into religion, is relatively small. But I had a fairly large group with me. And there didn't seem to be a problem in talking to them about esoteric things, because they had got religion. Now, whatever you think about religion, and whatever you think about dogmatic theological teaching, which probably isn't very much, it does enable people to get some idea what esotericism is all about. And I used to tease Geoffrey and say, well, I'm only a baby in Theosophy, because I only came to it a few years ago, and which was true, because, when Geoffrey died, I'd only been in it 15 years, which is nothing in theosophical circles. And he used to say again and again, he said, "Colin, you brought so much from Christianity. You were into Christianity at a depth which enabled you to have a grasp of the esoteric dimension." And so I think we have to realize that religion can be a stepping stone towards theosophy for people who are already in it, or were born in it, or who came to it because their family was in it, as I did. But I grasped it for myself. I didn't just take it second-hand. I made a big effort at Christianity. I belonged to the Church Council and the Diocesan Synod and various committees I was chairman of, and I was a Bible teacher and a study group leader. I did it all. I didn't do it by halves. But there was always something lacking. And what was lacking was never found by me, anyway, until I came to Theosophy. There was a huge opening of vision for me when I came to Theosophy. I would love to spend time telling you how I came to Theosophy, but I've got so much to do. Even though I've got 2 sessions to do it, I really won't divert myself at this particular stage. Anyway, I'm only leading up to telling you that on one of these moaning sessions that Geoffrey had at me when he came back from the SMN meeting, I said to him, well, look, why don't you play the scientists at their own game? Why don't you write out your beliefs in Theosophy as if it was a scientific way? He was, I think, so near the end of his patience with the SMN that he said, all right, I'll do it. And he did it. And the result of it he gave to me, and it's that. He did it. A scientific report on Theosophy. Fantastic. Only Geoffrey could have written it. But I think it was too late. I said to him, what did you do with it? And I can't quite remember now whether he duplicated it and circulated it to the members of the group or whether he didn't even get that far. But it was very soon after that he stopped going altogether to the group because he was so disenchanted with it and with its ability. And the last evening before he died, when I was with him, just a few hours before he died actually, because he died at breakfast time the following morning, he was still bemoaning the fact that he couldn't communicate the essence of esotericism to the scientific people that he had made friends with in the SMN. So it gives you some idea of how much it got to him that he couldn't communicate it. But his attempt in writing it up as a scientific paper was not in vain. In fact, if I had had the time at that time, which I didn't because I was deeply immersed in running the English section of the Theosophical Society, and I had little time to spare for doing it or spending time to regularly go to the SMN, I would have used this work that he did and tried to get something moving with it. However, I have studied that after a gap of about 5 or 6 years, I've studied this paper again that he wrote just as thoroughly as I did at the time that he wrote it. And I hope to show you how Theosophy comes out when it's looked at from the perspective of the scientist. But I have to emphasize all along that esotericism is an intangible thing. Intangible not just in the sense of not being able to grip it with your hand, but intangible in the sense of not being able to grip it with your mind. That is the size of the problem that we're faced with. And I'm going to light this candle and remind those of you that already know, and tell those of you who don't, that in the Secret Doctrine there is a passage in stanza 3 where the disciple is trying to find out what this esotericism is all about. And Gurudeva, the teacher, says to him, consider the spirit that's in the flame in the candle. Find out what the spirit is in the flame, and you'll be well on the way there, in my language.